Hey everyone, welcome back. And this is another episode of Yoli Building in Public. I'm building a mobile app on the iOS platform, and I am a non tech lead, marketer by profession, and using AI solely, um, just myself solo to build this mobile app. And today, what I wanted to do was take you through my tech stack and everything I have had to learn in the last 2 months to deliver the Borderless Self mobile app. It is now approved and I will be releasing it next week. And primarily still in the beta testing stage. So just looking for feedback from my target market. And it's been such an exciting and uh, terrifying and exhilarating experience. Um, Primarily getting to be the engineer and the architect, and as a marketer, validating a lot of things I have suspected along the way, as I have had quite a history of working with engineers for the past, I would say, 22 years of building experiences um, across various industries. So I've always been the person who was managing the company website, building the marketing entry points, uh, building with product marketing reporting into me. And so helping drive requirements for the product based on customer feedback and customer research and working with engineering teams. But it's always been this partnership, I would say. And sometimes the partnership goes well, and sometimes the partnership doesn't go that well. And but it is wonderful being the engineer and the architect as well as the marketer at the same time. And in fact, marketing has taken quite the back seat. And instead, actually, let me not put it that way. Let me say, for the first time, I am able to build marketing into the product. And that is so thrilling. So, let me put my nerd engineer hat on and let me just explain. I have the most I have had in terms of coding has been learning HTML, which I learned very early in my career, in my 20s. And so I've always been able to speak to engineers, but this is the deepest I have ever had to go in terms of being the person actually thinking about architecture and building database structures and information architecture, etc., and design and user experience, which I've always been very close to, but putting all the pieces together. So let me share a little bit about of my tech stack. I've created this visual alongside with my trusty AI assistant. So let's see if you can see this. So, what I had to build, what I had to learn to build Borderless Self as a non tech lead. And I've divided sort of the categorization of the things I had to learn into these eight um, categories. So, product design and experience, iOS development and app lifecycle, and I'm going to have to add Android to that soon. Cloud infrastructure, I'm using Firebase. And data and intelligence engine, I've had to build several databases, or I should say several tables into my database structure. And then AI and automation. Yes, I have integrated AI. Um, growth and engagement infrastructure. So this is primarily what I'm talking about when I say building marketing into the platform. That's the area that I felt that felt quite easy for me. Business and compliance foundation. This just comes from years of being on the management side, and then tools and ecosystem mastery. So this was probably the most kind of like engineering discipline um, for building an enterprise grade uh, platform. You know, this was the hardest piece, I would say, for me to learn and understand. And AI was very helpful in explaining the why of what I needed. So let's take product design and experience. So this is a category I've always had um, UX designers who either report into me or who I work very closely with. So I did the user research, I did the user design, and created the mobile app flows and wireframes. The AI did that, but I had to give it some serious guidance. Onboarding and activation design, I did a bunch of research myself, looking at existing mobile apps out there and what the best practices are today, what people are doing, what's working, looking at the data behind some of the best mobile apps out there. The information architecture, this is probably where the AI and I really, had to wrestle. I'm like, don't give me complex, give me simple. Don't show me how smart you are, make it work. Subscription and pricing design, as a marketer, this is probably the most overlooked and probably the most important aspect of marketing is price. We know the four P's or six P's or eight P's, depending on who you're talking about and how old they are, who you're talking to and how old they are. But in marketing, really, uh, price is one of the four P's that you really have to understand. And these days, with dynamic pricing, you have it's a very much a technical function and feature. Um, I'm using Superwall, I believe it is, for that. And no, actually, I'm lying. I'm using Revenue Cat for that. All right. App Store, this is for the paywall. App Store guidelines and compliance. That was really, I would say I submitted the app once and I got feedback twice, which wasn't bad. I was approved within, I would say, about 8 days. So I was impressed by myself. And I'll say that because I can't tell you the number of builds I have been on within enterprise organizations, places I've worked at, where the engineers were like, oh, we haven't heard back 2 weeks later. Oh, this and that and this. And I would always be thinking to myself, BS. And I could never validate it, but I suspect I'm right. I suspect partly sometimes there's not enough a sense of urgency of getting clarity from the App Store as to what they're looking for. And then sometimes it's just, um, I suspect sometimes the engineers themselves didn't know what the fix was. But, anyways, every product's different. So let me not be too judgy. But I would say it has been such a breath of fresh air to control the roadmap, something marketers have always wanted to do, but can't say that they want to do. But damn, now that the roadmap is in my hands, oh, It's like being a wizard in a candy store. Okay, so test flight and beta management, that was interesting. Um, just understanding the whole process of, checking in a build, archiving the build, and, just understanding that whole process. Um, it's been fun getting feedback from the App Store, and then, while you're waiting for that, working on the next, aspect of the roadmap. So I would say, for my first build, I am on build 7, and it is build 7 that, I will be releasing for public consumption. The second thing has obviously been, iOS development and app lifecycle. So I'm using I've learned to use Xcode and the terminal. I'm most of the code sits locally on my laptop. I am not using an environment like Replit or um, any of those tools, and that has been intentional. And so, yeah, so I'm handling the code myself, and I am, implementing the code myself with the AI writing the code. And I've intentionally done it that way because I want to understand the whole process. And so I have resisted using an agent that builds everything on the back end. I will probably graduate into that, but I will go into that fully understanding, um, the building blocks. The third group is cloud infrastructure. So I'm using Firebase. I probably have been surprised by how much I have enjoyed building the cloud setup and seeing how that works, and understanding how these database tables get populated and how they work together, and immediately being able to see something you've implemented, and then seeing, as the user goes through the journey, seeing the tables get populated. I have loved that. I think I could actually have, if I had to change my profession, that might be an area that I would go into. I really like how organized it all is, and how, it's real-time feedback if something is not built correctly. And the process of troubleshooting, being able to see in the logs. First of all, I love being able to see a user go through the experience, and you seeing, on the back end. So in Xcode, I can watch the code and I can see what is being called, and what is failing, what's not, what's a major failure point and what's not. I love that. So the cloud infrastructure piece and working in Firebase, I've actually really enjoyed that. It's been a surprising part of understanding, um, how engineering works. The fourth part is the data intelligence engine. So this was a lot of conversations between myself and the AI. Um, what are all the systems? I would say, this is the area where you do have an ability to build some proprietary thinking into what you're building. Um, it is the area that has the greatest flexibility, because it's a bunch of choices you decide to make. If you're prompting the AI correctly, it will give you a bunch of options depending on a bunch of factors. Is this enterprise grade? Are there government regulations? Are there specific things you need to have in place? Do you have PII that you need to be able to store some in a particular way, or do you have some flexibility by country? Um, is price a factor? Do you want to go with X technology because you've only got X budget? Um, or there's so many factors that um, allow for flexibility in this particular bucket. So it was a huge, huge, huge learning experience, but I was also doing a lot of teaching to the AI in terms of as the advocate for the user and as the representative for the business, what are some of the business decisions that need to be made here? Um, so I really this is where I think a lot of my work experience kind of gets brought to bear. But, at the end of the day, you're making some calls and some decisions that may work and may not work, or may end up being, good decisions in the long run or bad decisions in the long run. So there has to become some sort of decision tree that you use to to make decisions. For me, at the top of the pyramid is what's best for the user, what's best for the business, what's what's going to scale and be most secure. Um, what what speed obviously is a factor. This is probably the area that I struggle with the most, is making those calls for what where should we sacrifice time for the right kind of build. Um, all right, the fifth section is AI and automation layer. So this was probably like where the more tricky and complex parts, to an engineer who has built this stuff before, they probably know where to get code that has already kind of got this built in. But this was where I would say bucket number five is where I'm most proud to have gotten working. So OCR, my product can read documents and can place data and make some and use AI to make some assumptions about what it reads, whether it's been scanned or whether it's a photo, or whether it's an upload. And getting that to work for me was just like, yes. Um, even just expiry date extraction from documents, um, and then AI workflows and automation. So the automation orchestration, I was familiar with that from managing email teams and managing marketing teams that are doing marketing automation. And now you see the full scope of how farm automation can extend to how it interacts with the database, how it pulls information from the user's content, um, how you communicate and the infrastructure for automating communication, triggering and moving people along the journey. Um, so LLM assisted coding, yeah, I now have like a full process of how I work with the AI, and it's very effective. It suits my style, and the the LLM is getting to understand how I prefer to work. It's very much conversational, but also based on having very strict and detailed product requirements. But I also do find myself asking, what do you suggest? And then give it feedback. on their suggestion, saying, give me some options. Here are my constraints. And I get a lot of value from the AI. Um, so that has been a very enjoyable process. So the sixth bucket is growth and engagement infrastructure. This I'll probably do a whole podcast on, but the app has subscription model in it. It's got push notification. I was super excited to get that working. We implemented revenue cat for the paywall. This product analytics, I can see, we've implemented post hog, and I can see people navigating through the app. We have analytics, we have web analytics for the web supporting website. We've got sort of a whole log infrastructure on the back end. So it's quite detailed in various ways. I feel quite pleased with the level of analytics that I have built into the system. Built in a referral and affiliate rewards program into the platform, and a rewards management system, and some gamification, and referral. Uh, we've got a communication structure designed to drive engagement and retention, and we've already got some lifecycle emails in there, and user feedback loops. So that's like my nod to the marketing profession. And then seventh bucket is business and compliance foundation. So as I mentioned last week, I'm registered in 3 countries. Uh, so the financial infrastructure, the business registration infrastructure, getting the terms and conditions into such a way that the app can be marketed globally, adhering to GDPR, all of that, and the legal considerations, given that part of what I am doing is connecting people with professionals in the country that they're trying to emigrate to. Tools and ecosystem mastery, which is the eighth bucket. So using GitHub, that's been fairly straightforward. API integrations, that's also been fairly straightforward. I can't count the number of integrations I now have, at least number up to maybe 15 or so key integrations, and the management of that, the documentation around that. And so I have gotten into the habit of now asking the AI to create documentation, so that anybody who has to inherit this infrastructure can clearly understand why, what has been implemented, and why we have the integrations, and what each piece of the tech stack does. Now, I did want to have a section on what the benefits are of being a marketer who is now designing the system. You get user-centric by design, because I consider myself the advocate for the user. And so it's less about the tech. In fact, it's not at all about the tech, which is probably not how engineers think, but and I have to think about user acquisition. And so as we're building that, that can't be an afterthought. And so I think that's one of the benefits of being a marketer. um, growth and monetization. So the mobile app ecosystem is actually quite sophisticated when it comes to dynamic pricing and monetization. The blend between what is available on the free product and what's available behind the paywall. All of that thinking, I consider marketing. Um, and then everything is kind of data informed, and that's why I have implemented the level of analytics that I have in the app. And, you know, when you talk about business design, and we talk about, that section when I was talking about data and intelligence engine and the decisions that have to be made, that has come from, I hope that I can bring my work experience to bear there. And problem solving, as a marketer, you are definitely solving a lot of problems, particularly if you've been in management. However, I I have realized that the engineering work is primarily problem solving. That is the job. As you're building, you are just constantly thinking about solutions to problems. You are troubleshooting. You are architecting in such a way that you reduce the number of issues you have. You are constantly thinking about the right architecture so that your app is secure. And I'm sure that is going to be a constant. And so, having had that experience of troubleshooting and being a problem solver as a marketer can definitely bring that to bear as an engineer. But I would say that's probably one of the um, biggest, I have a lot of respect for the engineers because that is their job is essentially troubleshooting and problem solving and providing solutions and building something that isn't in itself a solution to a problem. Um, so that's it, guys. That is what I have learned so far um, building the Borderless Self app. How's it going, guys? I know some of you are using Claude and Replit and Um, as non-tech people, how has the learning curve been? I'd love to hear your perspective. See you in the next one.